Haffis monthly movie report. Hello and welcome to yet another episode. This time we're talking about familiar January. Because in January I saw 14 movies that were familiar in one way or the other. And as always I've ranked them. So starting off with the worst and going to the best. Here's number 14. Austin Powers, Gold Member. I'm familiar with Austin Powers because I saw the first movie, so that's familiar enough, right? This movie, well, it starts off real strong, but then it has a lot of low blows with jokes about farts and other disgusting stuff. I think overall the first movie was better. Number 13. The Bonfire of Vanities. Bruce Willis is a familiar face. Tom Hanks looks familiar too. Also Morgan Freeman familiar here. So how does a movie with this many familiar faces do? Well, it's good, but the best part is the first few minutes where Bruce is acting outrageously. Then it kind of goes downhill from there, very steep downhill, and is barely entertaining, but it did make me laugh. I'd rather watch a movie like Die Hard, You Got Mail, or Danny the Dog, though. Number 12. Second chorus. Fred Astaire is a familiar face, and there is more familiar faces in this, or familiar names. There was a name that I noticed, not while watching the movie, not at the beginning of the movie, but at the end credits. I was like, that name looks really familiar, but I don't know who it is. So I had to look it up, and that's when I realized that Mickey from Rocky had been playing the second lead in this movie. Yeah, really should have seen that one coming. The movie obviously has some dancing and singing because it's a movie with Fred Astaire, but it didn't really catch my eye. What did catch my eye was the terrible characters that Fred and Burgess were playing. Awful, terrible characters. Number 11. Bad Boys. A very familiar title, even though the movies have very different stories from each other. Probably one of my favorite roles that I've seen Sean Penn in. It's kind of cool seeing him this young as well. And this was Clancy Brown and Alan Rucka's first movie, or TV movie. So that's pretty cool. Unfortunately, the movie suffers from dark scenes where you can't really see what's going on. Dark scenes. Yeah, on to number 10. Flipper. What happens when you combine something familiar as Lord of the Rings with Crocodile Dundee? Well, you obviously get a family-friendly movie about a dolphin. And this movie has its fun moments. It made me laugh. Like the toasting of the bread. Good stuff. The upside down pentagram on the house makes me wonder though. It doesn't seem like it belongs. Why is that there? Number 9. Ivanhoe. I saw that James Mason is in this movie. I thought, hey, James Mason, that's a familiar face. And then I didn't recognize his face. I did recognize his voice though, because he has a very peculiar voice. Otherwise, well, it's a pretty good movie with like a holiday movie feeling. Robin Hood and his gang storming a castle while Ivanhoe does, well, basically nothing. I'm like surprised at why is it called Ivanhoe when Ivanhoe doesn't do anything. I think King Richard did more stuff in this movie than Ivanhoe, so maybe they should call it The Return of King Richard, while Ivanhoe lies around doing nothing. The hero that does nothing, Ivanhoe. Ivanhoe, the actless one. Also, this is kind of a cheap TV version of Ivanhoe, which seems to affect how good the action scenes are, or how graphic the action scenes are. Also, there's this typical fade to black that happens a lot at TV, and it happens a lot in this movie. Number 8, Virtuosity. More wacky than I remember it. Don't remember much of it though. But I have seen it before, so it is a familiar movie. Kind of. Yeah, it's familiar. Besides the movie being a weird mixture of the silly and the dark, it still managed to tie up a pretty good story. A well-crafted work of art, if you consider it art. Number 7, Edge of Tomorrow. Saw Age of Tomorrow in 2019, which is a mockbuster version of this movie. Edge is better when it comes to action, but there was a twist in Age that you'll totally see coming if you know that the movies are related. I thought Age was a mockbuster version of The Day After Tomorrow, and that's why I got surprised. But it was a nice surprise. Overall, I would say that Edge is the better one. I love me this Groundhog Day action stuff going on. Silly idea with the blood transfusion though. Really silly. Number 6. The Magnificent Seven. The remake of Seven Samurai. So pretty familiar, but not that familiar though. Has some cool action in it. I like this movie a lot. Chris Pratt seems to play the same basic character that he plays in all movies, while Ethan Hawke is playing a different role, I think. I never heard him hiss in any other movie I never heard him hiss in any other movie that I've seen him in. On to number 5. Scream! Yeah, the 5th movie, not the original. That's called Scream, not Scream 5 for some reason, don't know why. The movies have a lot in common. Nostalgia is a word that would describe this movie the best. Needless to say, it looks very familiar. Not only because of the old cast members from the first movie returning, but also because Dylan Minnette from 13 Reasons Why is in this movie. And I'm like, I know that dude. Yeah. Overall, I found this movie to be a great deal of fun. Not really scary, but that hasn't really been a thing with the Scream movies. And maybe that's why it's my favorite horror movie franchise. Or horror franchise. Yeah, that sounds better. Should have said horror franchise instead. Anyhow, have no big complaints about this movie. Might have wanted to trade 1 or 2 deaths. Keep some characters alive while I kill off others. And switch out the killer. That would have been fun. Also, the movie does a terrible job of explaining how stab wounds work. They should look into that. Otherwise, a surprisingly good movie for its time. Number 4, The Magnificent Seven. More touching and has more wisdom than the remake of this one. Not the remake of, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Also closer to the original, and so it's less original. It has Yul Brynner and Charles Bronson that are some cool characters. It has Eli Walsh that is a pretty likable bad guy, and that kind of works. It has Horace Bolch that plays the most emotional role in the movie, and it has Rosanna Monteus character that adds some sweet romance to the story. I think you would call that puppy love. It looks like puppy love. I'm not sure. I also recognize James Corbett from Charade and Robert Vaughn from Superman 3. And for some reason, Brad Dexter reminds me of Oliver Reeds. I actually thought it was Oliver Reeds, but it wasn't. Anyhow, pretty cool cast in this one. Number 3, Seven Samurai. Epic is the best word to describe this movie. While I remember Mifune's characters being annoying the first time I saw this movie, this time I found him to be entertaining, and I was surprised at how energetic he was. The way he moved at such speed. But then again, so did the other samurai as well. Well, maybe not all of them, but most of them. There's a romance in this movie as well as in the remake, but the remake did it better, actually. There is a heartbreaking scene, though, with Mifune's character, so it kind of evens it out. And the first little action scene has heavier weight in this one than it has in any other in any of the remakes. You know, the scene with the priest, and on the remake with the Indian, and then on the latest movie, the Stallone scene. Yeah, the priest scene is better. Also, the battles are more thought out in this one, and the results are countable, which I like. I was actually counting bad guys going down. I was like, oh, there's this many left, and it added up. Also, doesn't hurt that the movie is in Japanese. Number 2, Royal Wedding. Fred Astaire's familiar face once again, but this time in a far better movie, with both a better story as well as special effect than in Second Course. I suspect that they use the same trick for the special effect as they do in Space Odyssey, but this was back in 51, which is almost 20 years earlier, so that's pretty freaking impressive. The dialogue is funny, and the characters are amazing. Great. Made me laugh many of times. Number 1, Noska of the Valley of the Wind. Still the best movie I've ever seen, and obviously gets the first rank, and obviously is familiar because I've seen it a couple of times. Enjoyed watching the animation and the art more closely this time. All the different ways that they portray or animate or not animate the Omu in this one was interesting. Heard that the director was a bit of a communist back in the days when he made this movie, so I think it's kind of weird that the story reminds me of the greatest story ever told. Yeah. And that's all for my report on January. Now we're going on to February, and February I'm gonna try to catch up with my DVDs. Do some DVD catch up February. Not gonna eat ketchup though, because ketchup is disgusting. Until next time, bye bye.